Welcome to the dark side of true stories, where every whisper hides a secret and every silence has a scream. Subscribe now because here, the fear is real, and you never know who's listening. I've been a decomposition cleaner for almost 14 years now. You learn to approach death like any other job. You get in, you get it done, and you leave. The smell, the sight, the heaviness in the air, it all fades to the background as you focus on the task. Over the years, the horrors you clean up after lose their ability to shake you. But there's one case, just one, that still lingers in my mind like a shadow I can't shake off. It's the kind of job that doesn't fit into the neat compartments of my mind. One I never quite understood, and one that still haunts me to this day. I received the call on a quiet Tuesday morning, the kind of morning where the world feels like it's just waiting to wake up. The phone buzzed on my counter, an unknown number flashing on the screen. I had a gut feeling it was going to be a big one, the kind of call you dread, but can't avoid. I was right. Raw, we got a scene. South End, residential, it's bad. You'll need everything you've got, bring extra respirators, and bring a partner. It was Deputy Carter, a guy I'd worked with before. The tone of his voice didn't give away much, but I could tell he was uneasy, and in my line of work, that's never a good sign. I grabbed my gear and started loading up my truck. It was one of those mornings when you need coffee to wake up. The kind where your body senses that something's about to go down. I threw on my suit, making sure to pack extra respirators, gloves, and the heavy-duty cleaning supplies. I didn't know why, but something told me this wasn't just another routine job. When I pulled up to the house, I noticed the police cars first. Their lights were off, but the scene still had that feeling of weight hanging in the air, like a storm was just about to break. The house sat at the end of a dead-end street, surrounded by old trees and overgrown bushes. It wasn't a neighborhood you'd find in a brochure. It was a place where people went to disappear, or worse, to be forgotten. Deputy Carter stood at the entrance staring down at the ground. His eyes were tired, but there was something else in them, something unsettled. He didn't look up as I approached. "You're gonna want to see this, Raw," he said, his voice lower than usual. I followed him into the house, the air thick and heavy, like it had been sealed up for a long time. The silence inside felt wrong, as if the house was holding its breath. The living room was in perfect order, the kind of neatness that screams not lived in. No pictures on the walls, no personal items, just a few pieces of furniture covered in dust, like time had forgotten this place. Carter led me down the hallway to the bedroom. When we reached the door, he stopped. I could already smell it, the rot, the unmistakable scent of decay that hits you like a punch to the gut. But this wasn't just decay, it was something deeper, something wrong. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. He handed me a respirator and pointed to the door. "This is where it gets bad." I sealed my mask, but even through the filters, the air felt thick. I pushed the door open. The bedroom was dark, but not from the lack of light. It was as if the room itself was absorbing the light. I could barely see anything at first. The shadows seemed to move around me, and then I saw her. She was lying on the bed, her body positioned unnaturally. Not in a way someone would collapse, but as if someone had placed her there deliberately. Her arms were folded across her chest, her fingers almost too perfect, too still. She looked like she was sleeping, but the smell, the skin discoloration, the bloating told me otherwise. But it wasn't just her, it was everything in that room. The way the furniture seemed to clean, too untouched. The strange absence of dust. The only sign of life in the room was her body, and even then, it felt wrong. The floor beneath her was pristine, untouched by the usual decay that spreads after weeks of neglect. It was like she had been placed there recently, but there was no way that could be true. I took a step closer, carefully inspecting the area. The bed frame was undisturbed, no sign of struggle. There were no signs of trauma, yet the feeling in my gut only grew worse. The room felt like it was waiting for something to reveal itself. And then I saw it, a small patch of the floor, right at the foot of the bed. It was a perfect circle, almost too perfect. It was clean, free of the usual signs of fluid migration. I couldn't make sense of it. The rest of the room was marked by the signs of decomposition, the stains on the mattress, the smells in the air. But this spot was untouched, almost pristine. I knelt down to examine it. The temperature here was different. Not just cooler, but warmer. The warmth seeped through my gloves, like it had been radiating from below. My breath caught in my throat. No, that couldn't be right. This wasn't how decomposition worked. Heat doesn't just concentrate like that, not after weeks of stagnation. I looked around the room, half expecting to see someone hiding in the shadows. But there was nothing. just the same suffocating stillness. Carter was watching me closely, his gaze tracking my every move. "You feel it too, don't you?" he asked, his voice low. I nodded, but I couldn't speak. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of the impossible. I checked under the bed, checked the walls, even the closet. There was nothing, no sign of what could have caused the warmth, no explanation for the perfect circle. It was as if the room itself was holding a secret. After what felt like hours, I had to move. I began the cleanup, my movements mechanical, but my mind couldn't let go of that patch of floor. It was like the rest of the room didn't belong there, as if it were an illusion, a stage set to hide something much darker. I bagged the mattress, the bedding, the carpet, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something important was being left behind. When the room was finally cleared, I stood there, breathing in the sterile air. The stench was gone, replaced by the sharp scent of disinfectant, but I couldn't escape the lingering dread. I looked at the floor one last time, but the circle was still there, as if mocking me.
I've worked in some disturbing places, seen things I'll never forget. But this case, it's the one that stays with me. The one that haunts me when I close my eyes. Because no matter how many times I replay it in my head, I can't figure it out. What was under that floor? What had been there before she died? The warmth, the smell, the inexplicable circle. None of it made sense. It doesn't fit the pattern. And the longer I've tried to forget it, the clearer it becomes. I never will. Weeks later, I still feel the weight of that room. That perfect circle. I've moved on to other cases, cleaned up other deaths, but there's always that sense of something unfinished. Something unsolved. And every time I think about it, the questions return. What happened in that room? What had been there? And why was it gone? I don't know. I never will. But I carry it with me, like a mark I can't erase. A case that will never be closed. And that's the real horror of this job. Not the bodies or the decay. It's the mysteries. The ones you can't solve. The ones that follow you home long after the job is done. The call came in early, just after sunrise, when the sky was still slathered in shadows and the world felt quiet, almost too still. My phone buzzed sharply in the silence of my kitchen. A number I didn't recognize. In this line of work, unfamiliar numbers rarely mean wrong calls. It was a routine-sounding request, but the way the deputy's voice cracked through the line was enough to make me pause. Roar. We've got a scene. South of the city. A death. Looks like it's been a while. And, well, you're going to want to bring extra filters. You won't want to take any chances here. I packed my gear quickly. It wasn't the first time I'd been told to prepare for a tough job, but something in his tone made my stomach churn. Something wasn't right. The weather was already heavy. The late summer, heat pressing in, thick and oppressive. I knew what that kind of heat could do to a body. I arrived at the address by 9:30, just as the sun began to ripen the day with its full heat. The house sat on a street that looked almost forgotten. The kind of place where time seemed to stop at some point in the past. Overgrown yards, faded siding, the sort of house that no one notices until something goes wrong. A sheriff's deputy stood by the door, arms crossed, eyes darting to meet mine, but quickly looking away. He didn't say anything at first, just gave a tight nod. We both knew the situation wasn't going to be easy. He stepped aside as I entered, letting me absorb the scene. The house was eerily quiet. Too quiet. The air was stale, thick with the kind of weight that makes you uncomfortable the moment you walk inside. It was as though everything in the house had been holding its breath. The living room was spotless, almost unnaturally clean. There were no signs of life. The furniture sat like it had been touched in years. A couch covered in a faded, almost pristine throw, a coffee table that hadn't seen the slightest sign of clutter. Everything was too neat, too arranged. That's when I started to feel that creeping unease in my gut. The kind that tells you something isn't right even though you can put your finger on it. We walked down the narrow hall toward the bedroom, and that's when I felt it. The temperature dropped. Something didn't feel right about the air. It felt too cold for a room that had been shut up for so long. And the smell hit me then. That unmistakable scent of decay, but mixed with something else. Something sharp, almost metallic. It made my skin crawl even before I entered the room.
The door was taped with an orange sheriff's seal. I took a breath, sealing my respirator. When you've done this long enough, you stop thinking about the smell. You just breathe through it. But something about this room, about this moment, felt different. I opened the door slowly at first. The room seemed ordinary. A simple bed, a dresser, a nightstand with a glass of water on it. But then my eyes landed on her. She was lying on the bed, perfectly still, her arms crossed over her chest like she had been placed there with care. Her skin was mottled, bloated in places. The decay was advanced, but there was something about the way she lay there that unsettled me. She didn't look like a body that had been left to rot for weeks. No, she looked like someone had put her there with intent, positioned her exactly how they wanted her to be. But it was the floor beneath her that caught my attention. There was a patch of carpet, right at the foot of the bed, that didn't fit. Everything around it was marked by the usual signs of decomposition. The carpet, the mattress, it had all soaked in fluids. But this one patch, it was perfectly clean. No sign of any of the usual staining, no dampness, nothing. It was as if the rest of the room had aged and decayed, but this patch had been untouched. I crouched down to get a better look, and that's when I felt it. The warmth, it wasn't much, but it was there. Under my gloved hands, I could feel the heat rising from that small patch of carpet. Not like a normal heat, but the kind that sits low to the ground, clinging to the floor like it was still living. I had never experienced anything like it before. There shouldn't have been any heat left in the room. The body had been there for weeks. The windows had been sealed, and the air was thick with rot. But this felt wrong. Carter, the deputy, was standing by the door watching me. He was quiet, his gaze flicking from the body to the floor, and back to me. "That's not right," he muttered under his breath. I nodded, but I couldn't bring myself to speak. I needed to focus on the job. I had to keep moving, but the heat, that perfect circle, it stayed in the back of my mind as I began the cleanup. I cut away the bedding first, bagging it, making sure to follow procedure. But every time I passed the foot of the bed, I felt the pull of that clean patch. It was like the room itself was trying to keep me from investigating it, trying to distract me with the usual tasks, but I couldn't ignore it. The warmth was still there, a constant, silent presence. After I removed the mattress and bedding, I noticed something else. The carpet fibers around that spot were different. They stood up, almost unnaturally stiff, like they hadn't been worn down by years of use. They were too perfect. No fraying, no dirt. I ran my gloved fingers over them, and that's when I noticed it. There was something faintly shiny in the fibers, something that didn't belong. I pulled out my UV light, the kind we used to check for traces of bodily fluids, and shined it over the area. The carpet responded like I had hit it with a spotlight. The fibers glowed under the light, evenly, uniformly, not the usual random fluorescence of bodily fluids, but a perfect, deliberate pattern. Whatever had been here had been applied intentionally. And that's when I started to feel the weight of the situation. This wasn't just a cleanup job. It wasn't just a death scene. There was something more going on here, and it was slipping through my fingers. I asked Carter to step back, giving myself some space to think. I knew I had to get the rest of the room cleaned, but the patch was like a puzzle I couldn't solve. I finished my work, moving the body, sanitizing the room, but the heat from that circle, that clean, perfect circle, stayed with me. Hours later, when the room was finally cleared, I took a final look. The air was clean now. The smell was gone, replaced by the sharp sting of disinfectant. But the room was still too quiet. There was no sound of life in the house, no hum of a refrigerator, no distant voices. It was as if the house itself had died with the woman. As I was about to leave, Carter stopped me. "I've been thinking about that spot," he said, his voice lower than usual. "The lab ran some tests on the flooring material. They couldn't match it to anything. The warmth, they couldn't explain it either. They just said it was unusual, like it had been alive at one point, but it was impossible to trace." I didn't know what to say. My job is to clean the mess, not to question it. But as I walked back to my truck, that question stayed with me. What had been under that floor? What had been left behind? And why did it feel like that room was hiding something I wasn't meant to see? To this day I still don't know the answers. I've cleaned a lot of death scenes, but that one still sits with me. Every now and then I'll think about it, about that perfect circle and the carpet, and the warmth that never should have been there. And I wonder if I'll ever find out what happened in that house, or if I'll just carry that unanswered question with me forever. Some jobs you walk away from, but some follow you. This one is still with me. The days following that cleanup felt like I was living in a haze. I could still smell the lingering chemical scent, even though the room had been cleared and scrubbed. It was faint but unmistakable, like it had seeped into my clothes. My skin, I couldn't shake the feeling that something I had missed, something I couldn't explain, was still hanging in the air, following me wherever I went. The job was done, the house was supposedly safe, but I couldn't get rid of the chill that crept up my spine every time I thought about it. A week passed before I heard anything more. At first it was just the usual follow-up from the department, paperwork, questions about the state of the scene, and whether I needed any further resources. Then came the call from Deputy Carter. He was sounding even more strained than before. "Raw, I need you to meet me. I know you said you were done with that house, but something's not sitting right with me. You've got to see this." I could hear the weight in his voice. I didn't question it. I agreed to meet him at the house again. When I arrived, Carter was standing outside, his hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets. He didn't greet me with the usual nod or handshake. Instead, he led me to the front door without saying a word. The house, even in the daylight, had a different feel to it now, darker, somehow. The same quiet, but this time it felt like the house had absorbed the questions, the confusion, and was now holding them in the walls. "I've been thinking about that room," Carter began once we were inside. "About the warmth, the circle. You said you couldn't explain it. Well, neither can I. But I've been looking into something. That woman, her name was Mrs. Elaine Harper. She lived alone. Neighbors say they hadn't seen her in months. Not that anyone was really close to her. A widow, no kids. But here's the thing. I found something in her records. Something strange." I followed Carter into the living room where he handed me a file. It was thick, marked with the usual red tape and department stamps. But as I flipped through the papers, something stood out. There were mentions of her husband, a man named Robert Harper. He had died a year before her, an accidental death, or at least, that's what the official reports said. But there were other notes in the margins. Notes about her husband's involvement in a controversial research project. I felt my gut tighten. "What's this?" I asked. Carter sighed, rubbing his temples. It was something he was working on before his death. Some kind of experimental preservation technology. The details are sketchy, but it looks like he was involved in some unconventional studies. And get this, his body was never fully recovered. I looked up from the papers, my heart skipping a beat. "What do you mean, never fully recovered?" There were reports of his remains being examined, but they were never released to the family for burial. His autopsy was listed as incomplete. It's like they lost track of him after a while. Carter's voice lowered. "And now, with everything that's happened in that house, I'm starting to think it's connected. Maybe he wasn't just part of some study. Maybe he's still in that room." The words hit me like a punch. The thought of someone still lingering in that room, something tied to the experiments, was a chilling notion. It didn't take long for my mind to reel back to the unexplained warmth, the pristine floor, the chemical scent. All of it seemed to align with something I couldn't wrap my head around. "You think he's still there?" I asked, unable to keep the skepticism out of my voice. "I don't know," Carter admitted. "But that's why I need your help. I went back to the house after you left, and I found something I didn't see before." He led me up the stairs and back into the same bedroom, the place where everything had begun. As we walked, I could feel the house pressing in around me. It felt more alive this time, like it was trying to tell me something I was too afraid to hear. The air was thicker now, the same oppressive stillness filling every inch of the space. Carter walked toward the far corner of the room, near the closet, and pointed. "Take a look at this." I stepped forward, and that's when I saw it. The closet doors were open, but now there was something more, a crack in the floorboard that wasn't there before. It was small, almost imperceptible, but as I knelt down and ran my fingers over the edge, I could feel it. The warmth was back, not just localized like before, but spreading outward, creeping beneath the floor like it was being fed from somewhere deep below. My mind raced. This couldn't be happening. It didn't make sense. The floorboards were disturbed in a way that seemed deliberate, as though someone had recently accessed something beneath the house. But why? And why didn't we find this before? "Something's underneath," Carter said, his voice low. "I don't know what, but I think whatever's under there, ... It's connected to the experiments. I feel like it's been here the whole time, hidden. Maybe something from that project, something that wasn't supposed to be found." I felt a deep unease settle in the pit of my stomach. It was like the house was trying to tell us something we weren't supposed to know. As I pressed my ear against the crack in the floor, I heard it faint, but a low hum, like a machine that had been running for far too long. "We need to open it," I said, more to myself than to Carter. "We need to see what's beneath." Carter didn't hesitate. He helped me pry up the floorboards, revealing a small compartment, hidden beneath the house. It was the kind of thing you'd expect to find in a laboratory, not a home. A small metal box sat at the center, wires protruding from it, humming with an unnatural energy. As I reached for it, the warmth intensified, flooding the room. "Don't touch it," Carter warned, but it was too late. My fingers brushed against the cold metal and everything went dark. The next thing I knew, I was lying on the floor, my head spinning. Carter was kneeling beside me, his face pale. "What the hell was that?" he asked, his voice shaking. I couldn't answer. My mind was flooded with images, flashes of someone moving, shifting. The face of a man, his eyes empty, his body preserved, trapped in some kind of twisted stasis. It was then that I realized. Mrs. Harper's husband hadn't just died. He had been preserved, kept alive in a way no one was meant to understand. His body was still there, hidden beneath the floor, part of the same unnatural project that had led to her death. The warmth, the chemical scent, the pristine circle in the carpet, it was all connected to him, to the work that had never been finished. And now, it was too late. Whatever had been done in that room, it wasn't over. It had never been over. As I looked around, I saw the walls of the room closing in on me. This wasn't just a death scene. This was something else. Something far worse.
I'm still carrying it with me. The truth that won't leave. Some cases follow you long after you've walked away. And this one? It's a question that won't let me go. What did they do to that man? What did he become? And more terrifying still, who else, if anyone, is still out there, hiding in the shadows, preserved for something we may never understand? Every night, when I close my eyes, I can hear the hum, and I know I'll never escape it. I had thought that maybe I could walk away from this job like I had with all the others, that I could close the door, seal it, and never think about it again. But some jobs don't let you go, no matter how hard you try. And this one followed me, gnawing at the edges of my thoughts, twisting in the back of my mind. I remember that night like it was yesterday. The way the air in my truck felt thicker, heavier, the closer I got to the house on Halberton Street. Even now, just thinking about it, my hands tighten on the wheel and my heart skips a beat. That house, that room, will stay with me long after I'm gone. I drove down the road, the quietness of the neighborhood somehow amplified, the houses staring at me as I passed, like they were waiting for something, waiting for me to come back. I thought I had dealt with it. I thought I had cleaned it all up, erased every trace of death, every hint of the horrors that lingered there. But there are some things you can't scrub away, no matter how hard you try. You can't wipe away the chill that lingers in the air, or the sense that something isn't finished. Something still waits just beyond your reach. I hadn't meant to go back. I swore to myself I wouldn't. But as I sat in my truck that night, staring at the now quiet house, I knew I had to. There were still too many unanswered questions. Too many things that didn't make sense. What had we uncovered? What was hidden beneath the floorboards? It had been a few weeks since Cotter and I had opened that compartment. The metal box that felt more like a relic from a forgotten time. I could still see the wires, the faint hum of power running through them. I could still hear that noise in my head, echoing back like a ghost that refused to die. The whole thing felt wrong. All of it! I parked outside the house. And for a moment, I just sat there, staring at the dark windows. The place looked so ordinary, but I knew better now. There was something dark about this place. Something beneath the surface that no one else had been able to see. Something that had been waiting for years. As I stepped out of the truck, the wind shifted, and I felt it. The same strange heaviness I had felt the first time I entered the house. The air around me seemed thick, almost oppressive. I couldn't explain it, but I knew that same unsettling energy was still inside, waiting. I walked up to the door, hesitated for a moment, then pushed it open.
Everything inside was the same as it had been. Clean, sterile, almost too quiet. The air, though, still had that same strange feeling to it, like the house had been waiting for me. I made my way upstairs, and the moment I reached the bedroom, I felt it again. That shift in the air, that sense that something had changed. The room was exactly as I had left it. The floor was still disturbed, the crack in the boards still there. But there was something more now, something I hadn't noticed before. The floorboards had been moved again. Not by us, but by something else. I crouched down, running my fingers over the edges of the boards. The warmth from beneath was stronger now, almost as if whatever had been hidden was ... alive. My skin crawled at the thought. Whatever had been buried there, whatever had been left behind, It wasn't done, not yet. I grabbed my flashlight and slid it through the crack, trying to get a better look at what was hidden beneath. But there was nothing there, just darkness. Yet the heat still lingered, pressing in from all sides like it was reaching out to touch me, to pull me into that void. I was about to pull back when something caught my eye. A small shape, almost too faint to see, flickered at the edge of the darkness below the floor. It was the faintest of movements, but it was enough to make my heart stop. Something was there. Something had been waiting. Before I could react, a sound echoed from behind me. A low, almost imperceptible noise, like the creaking of old wood under pressure. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. But there was nothing behind me, no sign of movement, no one in the room with me. I slowly turned my head toward the spot in the floor where I had felt the warmth, and my heart sank. The floorboards, they were shifting. Something beneath them was moving. And then, without warning, a hand emerged from the crack. It was thin, too thin, like skin stretched over bones, pale and waxy. It wasn't human, not anymore. The fingers twitched, and I could see the remnants of flesh clinging to them. A part of me wanted to run, to leave the room and never look back, but my legs wouldn't move. My heart was hammering in my chest, my body frozen in place, my eyes locked on the hand as it slowly extended out of the crack, reaching for me. And then I saw it. The face. It wasn't hers. It wasn't Mrs. Harper's face. It was someone else's. Someone who had been buried in that room long before she ever arrived. A man, pale and gaunt, with eyes that looked like they had seen things no one should ever witness. His gaze locked onto mine, and I felt the weight of his stare press down on me, colder than the air around me. The man opened his mouth and I could hear it. The faint whisper of words that were unintelligible, but somehow still carried a warning. I knew then what had been done, what had been hidden, the experiments, the preservation. It wasn't just about keeping someone alive, it was about something far worse. The man beneath the floor, the one who had never truly died, but had been kept in that state, trapped between life and death, forced to endure whatever horrors had been carried out in that room. And now, whatever had been done to him had spilled over, and it was consuming everything. The house wasn't just a place where death had been, it was a place where something had been kept, something unnatural, something that shouldn't have been disturbed, and we had disturbed it. I had disturbed it. I don't know how long I stood there, my eyes locked on the man's face, his hands reaching, his mouth silently screaming, but I do know that when I finally managed to turn and run, the warmth in the room intensified, and I felt something follow me. I left the house that night, and I didn't go back. But every night since then, I can still hear the faint whispering, the sound of something scratching against the floor, reaching out for me. And I know, deep down, that it's not over. Whatever was buried there, whatever had been trapped beneath the house, it's still out there, waiting. Some cases, some rooms, they stay with you. They never truly leave. And this one will follow me for as long as I live. Because there's no way to close a door that's been opened. And there's no way to forget a thing that's been unleashed. It will always be there, waiting. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Every comment adds a new shadow to our haunted corner of the internet. Share this if you know someone who enjoys a good scare. More spine-chilling stories are coming soon, and remember, the scariest stories are the ones that could happen to you. Thanks for watching if you dare.